It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 596 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Joining me on the show today is John Jantsch. John is the founder and CEO of Duct Tape Marketing. He's also the author of that classic book by the same name, Duct Tape Marketing. And in today's episode, we have a great discussion about why you need to think like a marketer in order to build your sales brand. Now, as I've written and talked about many times, you, the seller, you're increasingly the primary point of differentiation from your competitors in the minds of your buyers. So in today's show, John and I talk about how to become your own talking logo, if you will, in terms of, we'll get into what that means. And we'll talk about why salespeople, among other things, probably need to have their own website to help with their branding. And by website, meaning something that isn't a LinkedIn profile. And much, much more about how to position yourself as the authority, as the expert in the minds of your buyers. So if you'd like to see summary notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/596. Now, friends, we all had a sales slowdown from time to time. I've been talking about this for a couple months now. And when we do, oftentimes we default to the notion that we need to have more structure and more process. And sometimes we need to try new ideas to break out of the doldrums and sell up to our potential. So if you're looking for some new ideas on how to amp up and accelerate your sales, then you need to grab this report that I've put together just for you. It's based on the specific recommendations of more than 300 leading entrepreneurs, sales leaders, business leaders that I've had on the show that I've personally interviewed on this program. And I've compiled their practical tactics and strategies into a step-by-step guide that you can use to accelerate your sales today. So don't wait. You can get your copy. Go to andypaul.com/accelerate sales. That's andypaul.com/accelerate sales to get your free copy of my report today. And finally, before we get to the interview, as always, I want to remind you that we want to hear your questions about sales, sales management. So you can send your questions to me at andy@andypaul.com, and we'll choose from among the questions that are submitted and answer those on my Friday episode with my friend and co-host, Bridget Gleason. And the person who submits the winning question, the one that we choose to answer, they get a free half-hour coaching call with me. That's a $250 value. So don't delay. Do it today. I've done several of those coaching calls already, and people found benefit from them. So submit your question. All right, let's get back to the interview now. So I'm excited to talk with John Jantsch. John, welcome to Accelerate.
Happy to be here.
So glad to have you here, and you're joining us from Kansas City this morning. So hopefully it's you said almost a nice fall day there.
That's right.
Yeah, I'd love to. I grew up in the Midwest. I miss the fall.
Change seasons. I think I would. I love San Diego, but I'm not sure. I think I'd go crazy after a while.
Well, I had this.
70 and sunny there every single day. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I told this story about once when I was. Because I split my time between New York and San Diego, but mostly I've been from San Diego. And I don't know, it's about 10 years ago, I was at a club where I had just done a swimming workout, and it was Saturday morning, so we were getting through, and the sun was out, so a bunch of people were coming to sit around the pool and have their day. And these two women talking, very thick New York accents. And one said to the other, "I just hate it here." And another one turned to her and surprised, said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "It's the same damn thing after day, 70 degrees and sunny."
That's right.
I was like, okay.
Well, we have 4 weeks a year of San Diego weather, but it took a couple in the spring and a couple in the fall, and on our way, down into the depths of winter.
Yeah. Well, there's something nice about that. So, all right. So I open the show, typically the standard question for all my guests, and this question is, in your opinion, and you see things with, all the hundreds and thousands of companies that you work with in your business, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
Well, I think that, for all the bluster about all the changes in marketing, I think the biggest change in marketing is the way people buy. And one of the things that has almost gone away is the need for a salesperson to show up and provide information or updates. Today, salespeople have to show up, and if they're going to be invited, because we can find information and updates everywhere. So if I'm going to be invited in as a salesperson, I need to find a way to add value or to provide insights or to find a way to help me better understand my business or my business challenges as they relate to a product or service or something that you're selling. And so I think that takes in some, well, it doesn't take a higher intelligence necessarily. It does take a higher quotient of caring. I think in order to
emotional intelligence, maybe.
Yeah. Well, or just you have to care about your customers. I think more and we all have these images of the salesperson that nobody could stand, but dang it, we needed them because they gave us this year's pricing, and now that that's not part of the equation anymore. And so the people that are providing value, that are constantly optimizing the relationships they have, are doing it because they want to see people succeed and not just themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. I mean, one things I've liked about your work over the years, and I followed you for a long time, is, and maybe this just appeals to me, as I said, because I'm a fellow Midwesterner, but I compare you to people selling similar services or on the surface or similar services, digital marketers and marketing support. You're awfully low key and not much hype. You're not 10x this or 30x that, or let's hack this or hack that. I mean, how do you survive not doing that?
Well, you play the long game, I suppose, is the real answer to that. And I really, I pretty much just, I don't know the best way to say this, because I'm just being me. I'm trying stuff that I'm doing in my own business, and what works I share, and what doesn't work I keep a secret. But and I don't. So I appreciate, because I think you meant that as a compliment.
Yes, yeah.
I know you did. And so I don't. It's sometimes hard to answer because this just seems kind of normal to me. And I think what happens is you develop relationships. I mean, I have people that have purchased a lot from me that in 2017 that first started following me in 2008 maybe or something, and I think that's the mentality that I'm here, I feel like I'm here to serve. I love what I'm doing, and so it's not hard for me to dig in and figure out what works and doesn't work, or to enjoy the process of doing that. And then I just share it. And that's always been my mentality. So if that allows people to stay loyal and, feel like I'm, trustworthy. I mean, I shouldn't put this out on the air, but, I sometimes challenge people to try to find a negative review on Duct Tape Marketing. And I don't think they exist. And it's not because there isn't anything that, that people don't get. I'm just really never, ever not taking care of people. I mean, here's another thing I shouldn't promote, but if somebody comes back to me and says,
well, we've got the challenge. The first challenge is find a negative review.
And then I've had people that bought a product for me like 3 years ago, and they said, this doesn't work. I was like, well, you bought it 3 years ago. You didn't open it. You didn't use it. You didn't do anything, and it doesn't work. Okay, fine. Here's a refund. I just, life's too short.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I recently interviewed a gentleman who's, owns a marketing agency. I don't know if you know him, a guy named Bill Troy, and he's written a book that's going to be published early in 2018 called Clicksand. And I was just talking about sort of the snake oil salespeople involved with so much of the digital and online marketing these days.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but this seems to be I've heard this is about the third time I've heard this, like in a week, where people are saying these people these days are selling snake oil. I mean, they always have. I mean, it's been around forever. I mean, I used to get direct mail letters, from
right.
Snake oil. This is not a new thing. It's just a new generation of people doing new things.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
So it's but it's right. I mean, he's by sort of his point was, and it sort of speaks to, I think, some of the reason I think that you appeal to such a large number of people is that he said that business owners are adopting these methodologies, but they're not congruent with how they act personally, or the way that they want to do business personally. Yet they're being sort of this fear of missing out, that if I don't act this way, if I don't put together this email sequence and so on, and have these keywords, it's not going to work, and they're sort of freaking out. And
yeah, and there's so much of When the online stuff came and like the first people to get on Twitter, the first bloggers kind of got that, people sensed that, oh, wow, a lot of those people weren't any smarter than me, but, now that here they are, they're like big names in the space. And so I think it's kind of led to this, like every new thing, people want to be the early adopters and the big name in the space. And, I think that, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I think this infatuation with the technology and with the platforms and the tools is where people really go wrong. What I've always said is marketing is a system, and if you work the system in a way that adds value to your clients, it doesn't really matter. I mean, all the things are going to change over time. Facebook didn't exist, but if you work Facebook into an integrated part of your online strategy and you use it as a way to add value to your clients, it will or will not work for you. And so, I think the idea that this new thing is going to revolutionize, what people care about is, kind of silly.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of reached the point where it's like, okay, if I read one more article about, how to hack your growth or something like that, I'd, feel like I have to tear my eyes out.
So what's so great about those articles is you read them, you go, well, that's just good marketing. There's no hacking involved in that.
No.
You did something people liked, and they responded.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like a hack is something you do once, right? I mean, it's like the shortcut. Whereas, as you said, it's a system. Your growth, your marketing is a system that you have to do consistently.
Yeah, for a long time.
For a long time, not just a one-off.
Work really hard for a long time. That is the secret to success.
Yeah, that's true. We're in it for the long haul.
That's right.
Well, so I really enjoyed your book, Duct Tape Selling, which people know John for Duct Tape Marketing, but he wrote a very good book called Duct Tape Selling. I can't say that 10 times in a row real fast. Subtitle, Think Like a Marketer, Sell Like a Superstar. And I love the fact that you led off the book basically talking about listening.
Yeah.
And the word you use is listen perceptively. So tell people what perceptive listening is.
Well, I mean, the premise really of the whole book is that, as buying has changed, I do think that, two things. I've always said that, trust me, I'm going to get to answering your question. But,
no, take your time. Go ahead.
I always said that, marketing owned the message and sales owned the relationship. And I think those two distinct things, were always existed. And I think what happened is the way buying has changed is those two things have come a lot closer to each other, and that marketing has to think more like a sales relationship building individual, and sales, I think, has to think a little bit more like marketing, where that building their own brand and their own authority and their own expertise as ways to add value. And so that was kind of the premise of the book, is that I think that sales has moved closer to what good marketing really should look like. And so the idea of perceptive listening is that, and this is not new. I mean, this could have shown up in a Zig Ziglar book, 40 years ago, frankly, that the best salespeople, and I think the best, relationship builders, instead of showing up and saying, well, here's what we have, here's what we do, here's what you need, are always the ones that really let the client kind of lead the conversation and lead them, into the right path. I mean, my dad was a salesperson, bag carrying, around the square, salesperson. And he would always say, I remember him always saying, is people will tell you how to sell to them if you'll just shut up, and I think that's always kind of dawned on me is that's a hard skill, particularly, salesperson in a sort of high leverage situation is like, oh, what do I need to say now? And probably the answer is, what do I need to listen to?
Well, and this is more of an issue that we're seeing more and more these days, especially with inside sales teams that you got, your sales development reps that have their call scripts, and come hell or high water, we're going to ask these questions.
Yeah.
And what happens is they don't listen to the response because the response doesn't matter because I got to ask this next question. Boy,
that is so funny sometimes when you'll do that. And you're on the other end of the phone going, did you not hear a thing I said? Because I'm not sure why you're asking me that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I listen to recorded calls for reps and making it. It's the same thing as, customers can open the door to a follow-on question that's not the next one on their script, but too often they default to the one on their script. And part of that is because, they've got this sort of raging case of confirmation bias happening where, they're going to shape every answer to fit what they need to hear.
Yeah. And that's not just salespeople. I mean, I know that, ultimately most business owners are salespeople. And, a lot of times we're sitting across the desk trying to, get a consulting gig.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ourselves as a salesperson, but that's absolutely what we are, at that moment. And I can't tell you how many times I have sold, I assumed the client wanted more sales. Actually, what they wanted was to get their life back and to have more control over their marketing. And so my approach to getting them more sales, kind of fell on deaf ears. And, if I'd have just stopped and said, what would make this a win for you, and shut up, they would have told me exactly what to put in the proposal.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when I was reading your section of your book about listen perceptively is I was thinking about this idea that I work with salespeople and I call listen without filters. And in this increasingly scripted world is, just to the point we had talked about before is we don't listen to what people are telling us how they want us to sell and what they want us to sell them, because we have these built-in biases based on who they are. The bias or a filter, not a necessarily negative bias, but it's really hard for people to overcome that. It's just inherent in what we do. And being able to get yourself to that place where you are being perceptive, you are removing the filters, it's a deliberate act, and you have to be very deliberate with it.
Well, and some people, I think, I don't know if it comes naturally or if they've just learned the benefit of doing it, because once you start doing it, it really opens up a whole new world. I mean, I just even in, again, taking away the selling environment, because everybody can relate to this. I mean, we've all met people that we meet them and they're really interested in us and they ask us a lot of questions about ourselves, and 20 minutes goes by and they haven't said much and we've done all the talking, and we leave and we go, I really like that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that there are people that just end up getting kind of wired that way, and we genuinely like them, because they seem to care about what we actually wanted to do, or we're talking about, whether they did or not, I don't know, but it's a good.
Right. Well, actually, and the thing that sort of goes along with that is we also think not only do we like them, we think they like us.
Yeah.
And as Cialdini talked about in his most recent book is, we know about the no-like trust equation, but it's actually, he says, a second like in there is that studies have shown that we're more likely to buy from people we think like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll add that to my hourglass. I'll have 2 likes in it.
Yeah, 2 likes. Yeah, and your sales hourglass. Yeah. Yeah, I reorder that when I present it. I say, trust, no, like, and it's, I actually give people an exercise to do, sort of what you just talked about. People are having a hard time sort of learning how to question is to go someplace and just see how long you can ask questions and be interested in somebody else before you talk about yourself.
Yeah. But it is, it's an easy habit to get into, showing up and talking.
Yeah, show up and throw up. So another part of the book I really liked is this idea of becoming the talking logo as part of your personal branding section.
Yeah.
You're talking about creating your own personal sales affirmation. So talk about that a little bit, because I thought that was really interesting.
Well, the whole talking logo idea is something that I've, worked with 15, 20 years. And, like all good consultants, I had to kind of give a concept a name. So thus the talking logo. But the idea behind it was a way for you to answer the question, what do you do for a living? And you answer that question in a way that is of interest to me, not a title, or a job or a feature of some sort or a product that you sell, which is what a lot of people do. And what a lot of salespeople end up figuring out is that people don't really, to some degree, don't really care about your product or your service or what it does even. They care about getting their problem solved. And so if you can make a connection between the problem that they have and make a promise to solve that as part of your kind of what do you do for a living, it can be pretty magical. So, and it's typically, it's typically a statement you might use in a networking event, but it's really more about kind of your action, value oriented thing that you bring. Now, for my business, I developed, my talking logo, and somebody would say, "What do you do for a living?" And I would say, "I install marketing systems." Now, that's probably not the greatest, like most impactful emotional example, but it caused enough of an interrupt that it sort of forced people to say, "Really?" Tell me about that. So instead of saying I'm a marketing consultant, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I got 4 of those, over there on the other side of the room waiting to talk to me," I install marketing systems. Kind of made them, it wasn't as value oriented as some statements can be, but it caused enough of an interrupt and caused enough interest for people to say, "Tell me about that." And that's really, one of the keys. So if I've got a business that we worked with that is he does SEO, and SEO is really for a lot of people is a black art, and it's very confusing, and nobody knows what people do. And so he used to talk about all the things that he did and optimized and algorithms, and people would just go, "Great, okay, see you later." And so now this is going to sound goofy to a lot of people, but it changed his entire business. Now when somebody said, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "I make the phone ring."
No, I like it.
And they're like, "Okay, I want the phone to ring. Tell me more about that." And basically, we kind of boiled it down to all you need to know about SEO is I make the phone ring. And so that goofy as that sounds, that changed his business.
I love that one. Yeah, my rule of thumb is let's try to get it into 5 words if you can. So, but the thing with the sales affirmation, the reason I like the term affirmation attached to what you wrote about is that, yeah, I think for people listening to the show is if you've got your affirmation down, if you've got that down, is it may be something you use in a network meeting, but you also wake up in the morning, you're looking in the mirror, just like any other affirmation you may be saying. If you have, you may have some faith-based ones or self-improvement ones, throw this one in there, because this is eliminating the ambiguity in your life about what it is you're supposed to be accomplishing every day.
That's right. Absolutely.
And then okay, well, then what do I need to do today to make? You gave one in the book is, I challenge business owners to think bigger, or I install marketing systems. So then what do I need to do today to make that happen?
Yep.
And just start your day with that. And that can be a pretty powerful tool.
Well, and it can then also be a filter too, because there's a whole lot of stuff you could do today that's not going to be of much value to that affirmation. And so you can kind of say, "Hey, is this going to take me closer to my goals or not?"
Well, yeah, absolutely. One thing that you also talk about in the book that there's some degree of controversy around in sales is you're talking about creating your own platform. And I'm a big believer of this, but I know there's been pushback when I talk about it in some cases. And you're talking about even to the extent of not just becoming an authority, but hey, as an individual salesperson, you may want to have your own personal website.
Yep. Yeah, when this book first came out, I did a lot of speaking to sales organizations, and boy, I can't tell you, it was one or the other. I'd have 5 people come up to me at the end and go, "Thank God you're saying that. Look, I've been doing this on the side and blah, blah, and I think it's working, but I'm not sure." And then I'd have 5 people come up and say, "My company would shoot me if I did that."
Yeah.
They'd shoot me immediately if I did that. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. So it didn't seem to be much in between. And I think that what I discovered is that there is a lot of resistance culturally in organizations, for people kind of stepping outside, and some of it's real. It's like,
sure.
wait, you're representing the brand. Our lawyers better see what you're writing. So some of that may be real, but some of it's also, I think, inherent with sort of hierarchical, organizations that you report to the sales manager reports to X, and that's where you get your marching orders. And so somebody who steps outside of that is kind of thwarting the structure. I think a lot of,
despite the fact they all have LinkedIn profiles that 90% of them say they're looking for work. But anyway, go ahead.
No, good point. But I think that the real fear with a lot of organizations is that, that person is, and I'm, to whether it's on LinkedIn or they're creating their own blog or they're speaking at a industry conference, that that's just taking them one step closer to getting hired by the competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's ultimately that's the fear I think people have in not wanting people to do it, whether it's, whether they could control that or not. I think that's the underlying fear.
Yeah, I mean, in the age of LinkedIn, as I said, LinkedIn profiles, which is basically a personal website.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to find you one way or another. I think the value of having your own website is perhaps a little bit more of you as a person shows through, which your customers they're going to search you, right? Not just on LinkedIn, they're going to search you in general. You call on somebody and they want to set up a meeting, they're going to find out more about you online. Give them an opportunity to learn more about you. That's something that sets you apart.
Well, and some of my urging people to do this is because they're not getting these assets that they need, from marketing or from the company. And I think that, in some ways, that's what I was suggesting people do as well, because if you're going to be seen as a valuable asset to your clients or prospects, you better have research, or you better have graphics, or you better have, studies that you can share with them. And if you're not getting them internally, I think most good salespeople have done that. They've gone out and found what they needed, in order to add value. And if the company can't provide it, then they're going to make more sales if they go out and do that work on their own.
So you work with a broad range of, and this is sort of a little digression, but I mean, you work with a broad range of companies and salespeople and different products and services and so on. Others, and you've written this book, which I said is a very excellent book. But one challenge that we keep coming back to in sales, and there's a report from a company, CSO Insights, if you're familiar with them. They do a large report every year surveying sales leaders and so on about certain things. And what there's been is year after year, there's been a continual decline year over year of the percentage of sales reps that make quota. And down to, I think this year, the latest report was barely above 50%. So 51 something or 52. Any thoughts as to why that is? I mean, you look at it from both sides, marketing and sales. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, why do you think that is?
Boy, can I say I don't know?
Sure.
I mean, I'm halfway kidding, but I'm halfway not kidding. I mean, because anything I say right now is totally a guess. But I think it's a combination of a few things. I think the way people buy has changed dramatically. And so the salesperson's impact, or role in the way people buy has probably changed. There was a point where we needed salespeople, and now, there's a percentage of salespeople that are seen as really a hindrance, or a nuisance even.
Sure.
And so I think that people's choice, there are a lot of products today that we can acquire without talking to anyone.
Yeah.
And the user interface on the on the website allows us to purchase products without having a conversation with anyone. So I think that there are some people that actually enjoy that form of purchasing more so than having a traditional sales conversation. So I think I think it's both cultural and really kind of the way people buy has changed. But I wonder also, if that kind of survey is able to factor in that a lot of organizations have changed the way in which they sell. And I wonder what kind of impact that has on a survey like that. I would suggest that there are probably a lot of organizations going away from quotas in the typical fashion, and that a lot of sales are now being done by teams and by groups inside the company. And I've got to believe that is hard to factor into a survey like that.
Well, I think it is, but it absolutely is. And I've been pinging with guests on the show and also outside the show is just that topic is, if we have so few reps that are making quotas is still a relevant measure, right? And especially if the way we sell has changed.
Yeah.
But it's funny, I was talking to somebody last week who works with a company. They sell an app that helps companies sort of rationalize their incentive compensation systems and so on. And he was saying, based on his customers' experience, that even in team environments, salespeople are still being paid commissions, which I find odd depending on the product. But yeah, a whole separate conversation on that.
Well, in writing this book, certainly that was a topic that came up with a lot of sales and marketing folks, because I wanted to get inside of a couple of companies that were doing this well. And one of the things I discovered, and of course, I think people that work with big, large sales organizations all the time have known this forever. But there is a real the way in which those two groups, marketing and sales, are compensated is so misaligned that it is probably the source of a great deal of not being together when it comes to objectives. I mean, they have different objectives. They're compensated completely differently, and in many cases, almost guaranteed to have some conflict.
Yeah. All right. Well, one last question for you, because we're almost out of time. But again, something in your book that I really liked is you have this idea of what you call finish the sale. That the sale is not complete until the customer gets a result. And I think a great perspective for salespeople to have, because they're looking. We just talked about commission and checks. They're looking to their check more than, hey, is the customer getting the value out of this that we promised they were going to get?
Yeah. Well, and it kind of goes back to, and I think a lot of salespeople think the customer gave us a verbal yes, right? And a lot of salespeople joke and say, don't cash that, right? I mean, that
right.
Until the contract's signed. And I would go a step further, and in a small business, and say, it's not a deal until they pay us, because that was a sign that everything worked. And I think that it kind of goes back to the question you asked me to begin the show, that I think the sales folks that are in it for the long haul, that realize, compound interest is, year over year going to benefit them, are the ones that don't just sell. I mean, even if some division in their organization now takes over as soon as the contract is signed, the ones that I think that really get it are the ones that go back to that client and make sure that everything happened, that maybe advocate, for them when things aren't happening, because, they're going to get called the next time, and they're going to get referred, and I know that, in some companies, those are the ones that cause some controversy because they're after the customer service reps and the engineers, to do it when they have to be, but those are the ones that I think are probably getting the referrals and are keeping those clients for life.
Yeah, I think that salespeople need to have some idea in their account planning of what the possible lifetime value of that account is. And if you don't get that first result, then your lifetime value is pretty small. You have a short life. Yep. But to your point, build the relationship, produce value for them, then you get the follow-on orders. All right, well, John, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining me.
That's my pleasure.
So tell folks how they can connect with you and learn more about Duct Tape Marketing.
Sure. So everything we've talked about today, you can find all my books and the podcast and blog forever is at ducttapemarketing.com, and that's DUCTTAPE marketing.com.
Excellent. All right, again, John, thanks for joining me again today. Friends, thank you for spending this time with us. Make sure you come back, join us for the next great episode of Accelerate. Until then, if you get a chance, go to iTunes, wherever you listen to this podcast, subscribe, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate getting some feedback about what we could do to make this a better experience for you. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.